A few moments ago, you've just listened to the acceptance speech of the newly elected Premier of the Northwest Province, Bheki Mngomezulu, and very clear what his focus area is going to be. If we just stick to the two, he says service delivery and job creation. Let's bring some analysis now, and we speak to Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who is going to react for us, not just to this, but at the broader ANC. Prof, thank you very much for your time. I hope you've had a chance to at least even listen with an ear to Bheki Mngomezulu, who was just giving an acceptance speech a few moments ago. And one of the few things that he mentioned was that ours is to change the narrative out there. Talk to us about what you think he means here, because he does appear to be a man of not many words.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for having me, Mr. Mngomezulu. Basically, there are a couple of things that I picked up. One is that, as you correctly pointed out, he's a man of a few words. We hope that it will be few words and more action. But then, having said that, there is something a little bit disturbing, because if you come in as a new incumbent, coming from the same political party, and then you say you are going to change the narrative, the big question becomes, where were you when the narrative went astray? And that is the same question, by the way, that I asked when the current president took over from the former president, saying that he's coming up with a new dawn. I asked the question, where does the issue of a new dawn come in? Because ordinarily, you have a policy conference wherein, as a party, you agree on what your policy agenda is going to be, after which you then have an elective conference where you put in individuals to implement what you have already agreed to. So now, if Supra Mahumapelo was part of the ANC, Job Mohoro was part of the ANC, and Bheki Mngomezulu is part of the ANC, now where does the deviation come from? Does each incumbent come up with his own agenda, or do you work as a collective, as he also correctly pointed out, that this will be part of the collective? So those are some of the things that I picked up.
It's interesting that you mentioned that this is, or these are, deployees of the very same ANC, and as you correctly point out, Prof, in fact, Bheki Mngomezulu was an advisor to the now recent Premier of the Northwest Province, Job Mohoro. And the understanding there was that as an advisor, this is someone who would have obviously, I think in part, as part of the acceptance speech, say that I am taking over from where Professor Job Mohoro has left off. I mean, I listened to Job Mohoro when he was delivering his outgoing speech, if we were to put it that way, and he seemed to mention a number of areas where he was somewhat pointing to successes. So, as an advisor to the now former Premier, Bheki Mngomezulu surely should have counted, or at least said, I will be taking over from where Professor Job Mohoro has left off. He didn't say that. What does that tell us?
No, absolutely. It's one of the things that I say they are concerning, because you would have expected that someone who was working closely with the former Premier, Professor Job Mohoro, as you just mentioned it right now, you are supposed to have said, as the administration of the Northwest Province, these are the successes that we have recorded working as a collective with the former Premier. And now, as an incoming Premier, I'm not coming up with a new agenda. We are going to continue from where we left off. And in any case, I worked closely with the former Premier, and as his advisor, most of the things that he did, if not all, were as a result of the advice that I myself and a couple of others, we gave to the former Premier. So basically, it should be a seamless handover and a seamless transition from the then Premier to the current Premier. So one would have expected him to say that. But then to set his own agenda, for me, that raises eyebrows as to what really happened. Did you advise him wrongly so that when the time comes, he will shine? Or did you advise him correctly so that he would continue from his legacy? So those are some of the things that I think other people will be asking questions about.